the date that almost killed me. I don't know why I agreed to go on the date. Maybe it was the boredom, or maybe it was the way his profile seemed so perfect. Like he knew exactly what I wanted to hear. His name was Mark. We matched on a dating app, and his messages were smooth, polite, and a little mysterious, which, at the time, I found intriguing. I'd been on my fair share of awkward dates, but something about him was different. He was confident, and honestly, a little too perfect. We arranged to meet for dinner at this trendy little spot downtown. The place was one of those cozy restaurants with dim lighting, candles on the tables, and booths tucked away in corners. When I arrived, he was already sitting at a table, a glass of wine in hand. Mark looked even better in person. Tall, clean-cut, with sharp features and a smile that could melt anyone's defenses. I felt a flutter of nerves in my stomach, but told myself it was just excitement. He stood up as I approached, pulling out my chair for me. "Hey, you look amazing," he said, his voice low and smooth. I smiled, feeling a little flustered by the attention. As the evening progressed, everything seemed to be going perfectly. We laughed, we talked about everything from movies to travel, and I started to relax. He was charming, engaging, and I felt a connection, or so I thought. But as the night wore on, subtle things started to feel off. It wasn't anything I could immediately put my finger on, just small moments where the conversation would take an unexpected turn, or his smile wouldn't quite reach his eyes. At one point, I made a comment about how nice the restaurant was, and his response sent a chill down my spine. "Yeah, it's the kind of place where no one would hear you scream," he said, grinning. He laughed right after, like it was a joke, but there was something in his tone that felt wrong. I laughed it off nervously, telling myself I was overreacting. But that was the first red flag. The second came when he started asking about my life, my job, my routine, where I lived. It felt normal at first, the usual small talk, but then he pressed for more details. Specifics about where I worked, how often I traveled, whether I lived alone. His questions became more probing, and I started to feel like I was being interrogated. I tried to change the subject, but he would always steer it back, subtly but insistently. By dessert, my nerves were on edge. I excused myself to the restroom, needing a break from the increasingly uncomfortable conversation. In the bathroom, I took a few deep breaths, staring at myself in the mirror, wondering if I was imagining things. My gut was telling me to leave, but I didn't want to seem rude. I mean, he hadn't done anything overtly wrong, right? When I came back, Mark had ordered another bottle of wine. I glanced at my half-empty glass, deciding I wasn't going to drink anymore. But he poured it for me anyway, filling it almost to the brim. "Drink up," he said, his eyes fixed on me in a way that made my skin crawl. "It's a special night." I forced a smile and took a tiny sip, hoping he wouldn't notice how little I drank. Then, as we were talking, I noticed something strange. The couple sitting at the table across from us had left, but their wine glasses were still full, untouched. In fact, their entire meal had been barely touched. I scanned the restaurant. The place was quieter than before, emptier. I hadn't noticed anyone leave. It was like they had just vanished. Another chill crept up my spine. I glanced at Mark, but he didn't seem to notice my growing discomfort. Or maybe he did, and he was enjoying it. I pulled out my phone under the table, pretending to check the time. But in reality, I took a picture of him and sent it to my friend, just in case. I dropped her a text too. "Hey, date's feeling weird. Can you call me in 10? Mark caught me looking at my phone. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice dripping with fake concern. "Yeah, just checking in with a friend," I said, trying to keep my voice light. His eyes darkened for a split second, and then the smile was back. "You don't have to worry about anyone else tonight. It's just you and me." I swallowed, my mouth dry. I glanced at the door, calculating how quickly I could get out if I needed to. Just then, my phone rang. My friend. Right on time. Sorry, I have to take this, I said, standing up quickly. I answered the call as I walked toward the entrance, my heart racing. Hey, I said into the phone, hoping Mark couldn't hear the nervousness in my voice. You need to get out of there ASAP, said my friend. I'm on my way. I hung up and turned to him. My legs started to feel light and my head began to spin. Did he drug me? Did he spike me while I was in the bathroom? What happened to everyone in the restaurant? And why did my friend say that? I swallowed the lump in my throat and said to him, I'm so sorry, but I have to go. My friend's having an emergency. His face didn't move, but his eyes narrowed slightly. He tightened his grip on the fork in his hand and said, Now? But we were having such a good time. I know, I'm really sorry, I said, grabbing my bag. I could feel his eyes boring into my back as I turned to leave. I used every strength I had to move my legs. As I reached the door, I glanced back one last time. He was still sitting there, staring at me, that same unsettling smile on his face. But there was something else now, something darker in his expression. I hurried out of the restaurant, my heart pounding. Later that night, my friend took me to the hospital as the dizziness hit me hard. After a few tests, they found rohypnol in my system, also known as the roofie drug. I thanked my friend for getting me out of there and asked her how she knew. She said she recognized the picture I sent from a wanted news report. I couldn't believe it. And that's when I found it. Mark wasn't his real name. I Google searched his name, and no photos of him match up with any social media profiles. Then, I uploaded the image I took of him to see if there were any hits on Google. Oh my God. I felt sick to my stomach. My heart sank. 10 to 20 news articles about a string of disappearances, all with him as prime suspect. Women, all of whom had gone on dates with a man using different aliases, but always the same MO. I felt sick. I had been sitting across from a man who was a serial killer. To this day, I wonder how close I came to being one of his victims. Maybe I'm being dramatic, but the look in his eyes that night told me enough. I'll never know for sure, but I'm grateful I trusted my gut and got out when I did. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe.